The dust devils danced across the barren landscape like ghosts of the departed, swirling through the air thick with grit and desperation. The sun beat down mercilessly on the ramshackle mining town of Copper Creek, where hope had long since dried up like the creek that gave the place its name. Against the backdrop of towering red rocks and endless sky, a line of weathered wooden buildings stood like broken teeth, their paint peeled away by years of wind and neglect. Inside a makeshift shelter on the outskirts of town, 18-year-old Clara Bennett knelt beside her mother's cot, pressing a damp cloth to the woman's fevered brow. The canvas walls of their dwelling barely kept out the dust, and certainly did nothing to stop the sounds of drunken laughter drifting from the saloon down the hill. Margaret Bennett's once beautiful face had been carved hollow by illness and hardship, her breathing shallow as desert rain. "Mama, please drink some water," Clara whispered, lifting a tin cup to her mother's cracked lips. Margaret's eyes fluttered open, clouded with pain and something else, a fear that had haunted her for 20 years. "Clara, my girl," Margaret rasped, her thin fingers clutching at her daughter's hand. "Promise me, promise you'll run if they come. Don't let them take you like they took me." Clara's stomach twisted. She knew the story, though her mother rarely spoke of it directly. 20 years ago, Margaret had been sold to a cruel rancher to settle her father's gambling debts. She'd escaped after 3 years of servitude, pregnant and broken, finding refuge in this forgotten corner of the territory. The sound of horses approaching made both women freeze. Heavy boots hit the ground outside, and Clara recognized the voice that followed. Josiah Pike, the territory's most ruthless creditor. "Margaret Bennett," Pike's voice boomed through the thin canvas. "Your time's up. 3 months behind on what you owe, and I'm here to collect." Clara helped her mother sit up, though the effort left Margaret gasping. "Stay behind me, Mama," Clara said, squaring her shoulders as she pushed through the tent flap. Pike stood waiting, flanked by 2 armed men. His black suit was incongruous in the dusty surroundings, like a vulture dressed for a funeral. His pale eyes swept over Clara with an appraising look that made her skin crawl. "Miss Bennett," he said, tipping his hat mockingly, "your mother owes me $200. Unless you have it hidden somewhere in that pathetic excuse for a dwelling, I'm here to collect alternative payment." "We need more time," Clara said, lifting her chin despite the tremor in her voice. "My mother is ill. When she recovers, we'll find work." Pike laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Work? What work is there for women like you in Copper Creek? No, I have a better solution." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Mr. Harlan Cross from Silver Ridge is in need of domestic help. He's willing to pay handsomely for the right girl." Clara's blood turned cold. She knew what domestic help meant in Pike's vocabulary. "No. No?" Pike's expression hardened. "Then I'll take your mother instead, though I doubt she'll fetch much in her condition." From inside the tent, Margaret's voice rose in a wail of despair. Clara felt the world tilting, the same trap closing around her that had ensnared her mother 2 decades ago. In that moment, as if carried on the desert wind, strange words echoed in her mind. A girl sold like her mother until the brooding rancher claimed her as his own heart. She shook her head, dismissing it as exhaustion playing tricks. "Take me," Clara heard herself say. "Leave my mother be, and I'll go." Pike's smile was triumphant. "Smart girl. Boys, help Miss Bennett gather her things. We leave within the hour." Clara moved through the next minutes in a daze. She packed her few possessions, a spare dress, her mother's silver comb, a small Bible, while Margaret wept and pleaded from her cot. When Clara knelt beside her one last time, her mother pressed something into her hand, a small leather pouch. "Your grandmother's ring," Margaret whispered. "Hide it, sell it if you must. Find your freedom, my darling girl." The men were already loading Clara's meager bundle onto the wagon. She kissed her mother's forehead, memorizing the scent of lavender that still clung to her hair despite everything. "I'll come back, Mama, I swear it." "Time to go," Pike called. Clara was hauled up into the wagon bed, her wrists bound with rope. "For her own safety," Pike claimed. As they rolled away from Copper Creek, she watched her mother's tent grow smaller until it was just another speck in the vast, unforgiving landscape. The journey toward Silver Ridge stretched through the afternoon heat. Clara sat rigid between Pike's men, her mind racing for escape possibilities that didn't exist. The road wound through canyon country, red rocks towering on either side like prison walls. It was near sunset when the sandstorm hit. It came out of nowhere, a wall of dust and fury that turned day to night in seconds. The horses screamed and reared. Clara heard Pike cursing from the driver's seat as he fought to control them. The wagon lurched violently, and she felt it beginning to tip. In the chaos, one of Pike's men lost his grip on her. Clara didn't think. She rolled out of the wagon bed as it overturned, hitting the ground hard. Sand filled her mouth and nose, but she forced herself to her feet and ran blindly into the storm. Behind her, men shouted and horses whinnied in panic, but the sounds grew fainter as she stumbled forward. The rope around her wrists had loosened in the fall, and she worked it free as she moved. The storm was both enemy and savior, hiding her escape but threatening to bury her in its rage. Clara had no idea how long she wandered in that hellish cloud of dust and sand. Her throat burned with thirst, her eyes streamed tears that the wind immediately dried. When the storm finally began to die, she found herself among a cluster of rocks, completely lost. Night was falling, bringing with it the bone-deep cold of the desert. Clara huddled against the largest boulder, wrapping her arms around herself. In the distance, coyotes howled, and she wondered if this was how her story would end, frozen or devoured in the wilderness, having escaped one fate only to meet another. But as the stars emerged in the clear night sky, Clara Bennett made a vow. She would survive this night and all the nights to come. She would not be sold like chattel. She would not repeat her mother's story. The strange words from her vision echoed again in the desert silence. And this time, she let them settle in her heart like a promise yet to be understood. Whatever lay ahead, she would meet it on her own terms. The first rays of dawn found Clara still alive, though barely. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her throat so parched that swallowing felt like gulping sand. She had dozed fitfully against the rocks, jerking awake each time a coyote howled or the wind shifted. Now, as the sun climbed higher, she knew she had to move or perish. The landscape around her was alien and hostile, red rocks jutting from the earth like ancient bones, sparse vegetation clinging to life in the cracks. She had no idea which direction led to civilization, but staying put meant certain death. Clara forced herself to stand, her legs trembling with exhaustion, and began walking toward what she hoped was north. The sun was merciless. Within an hour, her dark hair was plastered to her skull with sweat, her dress clinging to her body. Mirages shimmered on the horizon, lakes of cool water that dissolved into more dust and stone as she approached. She thought of her mother, wondered if Margaret was still alive, if Pike had returned to Copper Creek in his fury. By midday, Clara could barely put one foot in front of the other. Her vision blurred, and she stumbled frequently, skinning her palms on the rough ground. The leather pouch containing her grandmother's ring was still tied securely inside her bodice, her only possession of value, her only hope for eventual freedom. She was crawling up a slight rise, no longer able to walk, when she heard it, the sound of hoofbeats. Terror gave her a burst of strength. Pike's men! They'd found her! Clara tried to hide behind a scraggly juniper, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She collapsed in the thin shade, waiting for rough hands to drag her back to captivity. But the rider who crested the hill wasn't one of Pike's men. He sat his horse like he'd been born to it, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing the practical clothes of a working rancher, worn leather chaps, a blue cotton shirt faded by sun and washing, a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. As he drew closer, Clara could see he was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair that needed cutting and a jaw roughened by several days' growth of beard. The man reined in his horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and studied her with eyes the color of storm clouds. There was something in his expression, a wariness mixed with, was it sorrow? He dismounted slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Miss," His voice was deep, rough from disuse. "Miss, can you hear me?" Clara tried to speak but only managed to croak. The man quickly pulled a canteen from his saddle and knelt beside her. Easy now. Small sips. The water was warm but tasted like salvation. Clara drank carefully, feeling life seep back into her body. When she could finally speak, she whispered, "Thank you." The stranger was already examining her condition with practical efficiency, noting her torn dress, her scraped hands, the telltale rope marks on her wrists. His jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" Clara hesitated. What if this man knew Pike? What if he would return her for a finder's fee? "I got lost in the sandstorm yesterday." "That's not what I asked." His gray eyes were steady on hers. "Those rope marks aren't from getting lost." Before Clara could respond, she heard what he'd already noticed. More horses approaching. 3 riders appeared on the horizon, and even at a distance, she recognized Pike's black suit. "Please," she gasped, clutching the stranger's sleeve. "Please don't let them take me." The man looked from her terrified face to the approaching riders, and something shifted in his expression. Without a word, he lifted her onto his horse, swinging up behind her. His arm came around her waist, holding her secure against his chest. "Can you ride?" he asked quietly. Clara nodded, though she'd never been on a horse this large before. "Then hold on." He spurred the bay into motion, not fleeing but riding steadily toward a gap in the rocks. Clara could hear Pike shouting behind them, demanding they stop. But the stranger paid no attention. He guided his horse through a narrow canyon Clara hadn't even noticed, then up a treacherous path that Pike's wagon horses couldn't follow. They rode for what felt like hours, though the sun told her it was less. The stranger knew this land intimately, choosing paths that seemed invisible until they were upon them. Finally, as afternoon shadows grew long, they descended into a hidden valley. Clara's first glimpse of the ranch took her breath away. Nestled against the protective wall of a mesa, with a spring-fed stream running through it, the place was an oasis in the harsh landscape. A grove of cottonwoods provided shade, their leaves whispering in the breeze. The main house was built of logs and stone, solid and enduring, with a wide porch facing west. Beyond it were a barn, corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse. "Welcome to the Triple S," the man said, his voice neutral. "You'll be safe here." He helped her down from the horse, and Clara's legs nearly buckled. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow, then led her to the house. Inside, it was blessedly cool and dim. The furniture was simple but well made. The floors swept clean. It was a bachelor's home, clearly, but one kept with a certain rough pride. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair at the kitchen table. He pumped water into a basin, wet a cloth, and handed it to her. While Clara cleaned her face and hands, he busied himself at the stove, heating something that smelled like stew. "My name is Samuel Sutton," he said finally, setting a bowl in front of her. "Most call me Sam. This is my place." "Clara," she replied, too hungry to say more as she ate the simple meal. Sam sat across from her, drinking coffee, his expression unreadable. "Now," he said when she'd finished. "The truth. Who are you running from?" Clara met his steady gaze and decided to risk honesty. She told him everything: her mother's illness, the debt to Pike, being sold to a stranger in Silver Ridge. Sam's face darkened as she spoke, especially when she described the rope marks. "Josiah Pike," he said, and there was something dangerous in his quiet tone. "I know of him. And Harlan Cross." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "They won't give up easily. Pike doesn't like losing property." "I'm not property," Clara said fiercely. Sam turned back to her, and for the first time, she saw what might have been approval in his eyes. "No, you're not, and you won't be, not while you're under my roof." He paused, seeming to wrestle with a decision. "You can stay here, work for your keep. I need help with cooking, mending, such things. It's honest work for honest wages." "Why?" Clara asked. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Sam was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the gathering dusk. Let's just say I have my reasons for disliking men who think they can buy and sell people. His voice carried weight, hinting at old pain. You'll have the small room off the kitchen. There's a bolt on the inside of the door. You're free to leave whenever you choose. But he gestured toward the window, where the vast, hostile landscape stretched endlessly. This is hard country. Pike will be watching the trails. Clara nodded, understanding. She was trading one form of captivity for another. Perhaps, but this felt different. This man had asked nothing of her except honest work. He'd risked Pike's anger to help her. "Thank you," she said simply. Sam nodded curtly and showed her to the small room. It was sparse but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window looking out toward the cottonwoods. After the tent in Copper Creek, it felt like luxury. "There's water in the pitcher," Sam said. "I'll leave some clothes outside your door. They were my sister's. Should fit well enough. Rest tonight. Work starts at dawn." He turned to go, then paused. "Lock the door. Miss Clara, trust has to be earned in both directions." After he left, Clara did as he suggested, sliding the bolt home with shaking fingers. She washed the dust and fear from her body, changed into the clean clothes, a simple calico work dress that did indeed fit reasonably well, and lay down on the bed. Through her window, she could see the first stars appearing. Somewhere out there, Pike was searching for her. Somewhere, her mother was sick and alone. But for now, for tonight, Clara was safe. She thought again of those strange words that had echoed through her mind. A girl sold like her mother until the brooding rancher claimed her as his own heart. Samuel Sutton had claimed nothing except her right to freedom. But as Clara drifted toward sleep, she wondered about the shadows in his gray eyes, the pain he kept locked away. What had brought him to this hidden valley? What ghosts haunted his quiet nights? Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, for the first time in memory, Clara Bennett slept without fear, protected by strong walls and a stranger's unexpected honor. The rooster's crow came too early, pulling Clara from dreams of dust and pursuit. For a moment, she couldn't place the solid walls around her, the clean smell of lumber and lye soap. Then memory rushed back. The rescue, the hidden ranch, the taciturn man who'd offered her sanctuary. She dressed quickly in the calico work dress and found Sam already in the kitchen, coffee brewing on the stove. He glanced up from cleaning his rifle, nodded once, and returned to his task. Clara understood. This was how it would be. No unnecessary words, no forced pleasantries, just work and quiet coexistence. "Breakfast?" she asked, moving to the stove. "Supplies are in the pantry. The hands will be hungry when they come in from checking the herd." Clara found eggs, bacon, flour for biscuits. As she worked, she noticed Sam watching from the corner of his eye, assessing her competence. She'd learned to cook over campfires and in drafty tents. A proper stove was a luxury that made the task almost pleasant. 3 ranch hands appeared as she was pulling biscuits from the oven. Weathered men who touched their hat brims politely but asked no questions about the unexpected woman in their boss's kitchen. Clara served them silently, noting their appreciation for the hot meal. Days fell into a rhythm. Clara rose before dawn to start breakfast, spent mornings on household tasks, washing, mending, cleaning. Afternoons might find her in the vegetable garden, coaxing life from the desert soil, or helping with the lighter ranch work. Sam had been true to his word. The work was hard but honest, and he paid her fairly each week. Coins she hid carefully in the leather pouch with her grandmother's ring. He was a mystery, this Samuel Sutton. During the day, he worked alongside his men, breaking horses, mending fences, moving cattle to better grazing. But in the evenings, Clara sometimes caught him staring into the fire with that 1,000-yard look she recognized from the war veterans who drifted through Copper Creek. He kept a photograph on the mantel, a family group, faces blurred by time, but never spoke of them. 2 weeks passed in this careful dance of distance. Then came the day Clara was gathering eggs when she heard horses approaching. Her blood froze. Sam was out with the hands, moving cattle to the north pasture. She was alone, but it wasn't Pike who rode into the yard. It was a well-dressed woman driving a small buggy, accompanied by a man Clara recognized as Silver Ridge's sheriff. She stayed hidden in the henhouse, watching through the slats. The woman, 40-ish, with steel-gray hair and a stern expression, marched up to the house like she owned it. "Mr. Sutton," she called. "I know you're hiding that girl. My brother has legal papers. She belongs to him." Clara's heart sank. The woman must be Harlan Cross's sister. The sheriff looked uncomfortable but stood beside her, hand resting on his gun. "Ain't nobody here but me and the boys. Mrs. DeWitt," one of the ranch hands said. Emerging from the barn, it was Jake, the oldest of Sam's men, grizzled and loyal. "Don't lie to me, Mrs." DeWitt snapped. "That girl was bought and paid for. She's a thief and a runaway." "Can't steal yourself, ma'am," Jake said mildly. "Leastways, not since Mr. Lincoln said so." The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Jake, there's the matter of a debt. Then it's a civil matter, not criminal." Jake interrupted. "You got no cause to be searching private property without a warrant." Clara held her breath as the argument continued. Eventually, Mrs. DeWitt and the sheriff left, but not before promising they'd return with the proper papers. As their dust settled, Clara emerged from hiding, shaking. Jake spotted her and spat tobacco juice. "They'll be back, miss." "You'd best tell the boss." When Sam returned that evening, his face went stone-hard at the news. He sent the hands to their supper and sat across from Clara at the kitchen table. "They won't stop," he said quietly. "Pike's got influence, and Cross has money. They'll find a judge to sign whatever papers they want." "I'll leave," Clara said, though the thought of facing the desert alone again terrified her. "I won't bring trouble to you." "No." The word was flat, final. Sam stood and paced to the window. "I told you, you're under my protection here, but we need to be smart about this." Over the next days, Sam implemented new precautions. One of the hands always stayed near the house. Clara learned to recognize warning whistles, knew which hiding spots Sam had prepared, but she chafed at being prisoner again, even in this kinder cage. It was during one of these tense afternoons that Clara found Sam in the barn, working with a young horse. The animal was skittish, fearful, and Sam's usual firm methods weren't working. Without thinking, Clara approached slowly, humming an old lullaby her mother used to sing. "Careful," Sam warned, but Clara kept moving, her voice soft and steady. The horse's ears flicked toward her. She held out her hand, patient, unthreatening. After long minutes, the animal stretched its neck to sniff her fingers. "How did you know to do that?" Sam asked, and Clara heard genuine curiosity in his voice. "My mother had a way with frightened creatures," Clara said, stroking the horse's neck. "She said fear recognizes kindness, if you're patient enough." Sam watched her work with the horse, something shifting in his expression. That evening, for the first time, he lingered after supper instead of retreating to his solitary contemplations. "My sister sang that song," he said suddenly. "The lullaby." Clara waited, sensing the weight of unspoken words. "She was about your age when the war came," Sam continued, staring into his coffee cup. "I joined up, left her and my parents on our farm in Missouri, border country. Bad country to be during those years." His voice roughened. "Raiders came while I was gone, burned everything, killed my father, took my mother and sister to sell to the highest bidder." Clara's breath caught. Now she understood the shadows in his eyes, his immediate protection of her. "I searched for 2 years after the war," Sam said. "Found my mother's grave in Kansas. Never found Mary." He looked up at Clara then, and she saw the depth of his old pain. "So when I saw you in the desert, rope marks on your wrists, I couldn't ride by. Not again." "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. Sam shook his head. "It's the past. But Pike and men like him, they're why I came to this hidden place. Thought I could escape it all." He gave a bitter laugh. "But evil has a way of finding you, Doesn't it? Before Clara could respond, they heard the warning whistle. Riders approaching, fast. Sam was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "The root cellar," he said. "Go!" But Clara was tired of hiding. "No, this is my fight too." Sam looked ready to argue, but the riders were already in the yard. Through the window, Clara could see it was worse than before. Pike himself, flanked by 6 armed men, with the sheriff and a well-dressed man who must be Harlan Cross. "Sutton," Pike called. "We've got legal papers. Send out the girl, and there won't be trouble." Sam stepped onto the porch, rifle held casually but ready. His men materialized from various corners of the ranch, similarly armed. "Let's see these papers." The sheriff, clearly wishing he was elsewhere, held up a document. Judge Morrison signed it. The girl's labor was legally contracted to pay a debt. She's bound to fulfill it. "Judge Morrison?" Sam's voice was dangerous. "The one who owns shares in Cross's silver mine?" "Now, Sam," the sheriff started, but Cross interrupted. "Enough talk. I paid good money for a housekeeper. She comes with us now, or we take her." "Try it," Sam said softly. The tension stretched taut. Clara could see fingers tightening on triggers. New blood was seconds away. Without thinking, she pushed past Sam onto the porch. "Stop!" she called out. "No one needs to die for this." Pike's smile was triumphant. "Smart girl. Come along now." "I said stop, not surrender," Clara said, her voice carrying surprising strength. "Mr. Pike, you claim I owe a debt. Tell me, what was the exact amount?" $200, Pike said. "Plus interest. Call it $250 now." Clara reached into her bodice and pulled out the leather pouch. From it, she took her grandmother's ring, a simple gold band with a small ruby. "This is worth at least $300. Take it. The debt is paid." Pike's eyes glittered greedily, but Cross protested. "I don't want money. I want what I paid for." "You paid to clear a debt," Clara said, loud enough for all to hear. "The debt is now cleared by other means, unless you're saying you weren't buying a debt, but a person, because I believe there are federal laws about that now. Aren't there, Sheriff?" The sheriff looked even more uncomfortable. The political winds had shifted since the war, and while local corruption might turn a blind eye to many things, outright slavery was dangerous ground. Sam stepped forward, backing Clara's play. "Seems straightforward to me. The ladies offered to settle the debt. Take it or leave it, but either way, you're done here." For a long moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then Pike snatched the ring from Clara's hand. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is," Sam said. "You've been paid. You come here again for any reason, and I'll consider it trespassing." "And Sheriff?" He fixed the lawman with a steady gaze. "I'll be writing to the federal marshal about judges who sign suspicious documents. Might want to be more careful about which papers you enforce." Slowly, reluctantly, Pike and his men withdrew. As their dust faded, Clara's knees nearly buckled. Sam's hand on her elbow steadied her. "Your grandmother's ring," he said quietly. "That was all you had. It bought my freedom," Clara replied. "She would have wanted that." Sam looked at her for a long moment, and Clara saw something new in his eyes, not just protective instinct, but genuine admiration. "You've got courage, Clara Bennett." That night, as Clara helped serve supper to the hands, she noticed their increased respect. She'd stood with them, risked herself for the ranch. She was no longer just the woman their boss was protecting. She was one of them. Later, as she cleaned the kitchen, Sam lingered again. "They might still come back," he warned. "Men like Pike don't like being bested. Then we'll face them together," Clara said simply. Sam nodded slowly. "Together." He agreed, and the word held weight, like a promise sealed. Outside, the wind sang through the cottonwoods, and for the first time since arriving at the Triple S, Clara felt she might truly have found not just safety, but a home. The drought announced itself with cloudless skies that stretched endlessly, each dawn bringing the same merciless sun. It had been 3 weeks since Pike's confrontation, and while Clara no longer jumped at every sound of approaching horses, a new threat emerged from the land itself. Sam stood at the edge of the creek one morning, Clara beside him, both staring at the sluggish trickle that had once run clear and strong. "It's worse than I thought," he said quietly. "At this rate, we'll be dry in 2 weeks. Clara had learned to read the signs, the way the cottonwood's leaves curled inward, how the cattle gathered listlessly near the shrinking waterholes. The vegetable garden she'd coaxed to life was already withering despite her careful watering. "There's the old well," Jake suggested, having joined them. "Been capped for years, but might still have water." Sam shook his head. "Went dry in 61. That's why my predecessor abandoned this place." He removed his hat, wiping sweat from his brow. "We'll have to dig new wells, haul water from Widow's Spring if we can get permission." Over the following days, the ranch transformed into a battleground against nature. Clara had never seen Sam work so hard, his shirt soaked with sweat as he and the men dug test holes, searching for water. She did her part, rationing carefully, collecting every drop of washing water for the struggling garden. It was during one of these scorching afternoons that Clara found herself alone with Sam at a dried-up spring 2 miles from the house. They'd ridden out to check if any moisture remained, but found only cracked earth and the bones of some long-dead animal. "My fault," Sam said suddenly, staring at the barren ground. "Should have prepared better, stored more water during the spring rains." "You couldn't have known," Clara said, touching his arm gently. It was the first time she'd voluntarily reached out to him, and she felt him tense, then slowly relax. "A man's supposed to provide," he continued, his voice rough. "For his land, his animals, his—" He stopped, glancing at her, then away. "His people?" Clara suggested softly. Sam met her eyes then, and something electric passed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained for weeks suddenly felt paper-thin. "You're not my people," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "You're free to leave whenever you want." "I know," Clara said simply. "That's why I stay." They were silent on the ride back, but the awareness between them had shifted, deepened. That evening, as Clara served supper, her hand brushed Sam's as she set down his plate. He caught her fingers briefly, a touch so fleeting she might have imagined it, except for the warmth that lingered on her skin. The drought worsened. Cattle began dying, their bodies dotting the range like fallen soldiers. Sam was forced to sell half his remaining herd at rock-bottom prices, the buyers knowing desperation when they saw it. Clara watched the defeat creeping into his shoulders, the way he stared longer into the fire each night. One evening, she found him sitting on the porch, head in his hands. Without asking, she sat beside him on the wooden bench. "Tell me about before," she said. "Before the war, before all this." Sam was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, we had a farm in Missouri. Good land, black soil that would grow anything. My father was a stern man, but fair. My mother sang while she worked. And Mary," his voice caught. "Mary wanted to be a teacher. Had books scattered all over the house, always reading to anyone who'd listen." "She sounds wonderful." Clara said, "She would have liked you." Sam said suddenly, "You have her stubbornness, her way of seeing good where others might miss it." He turned to look at Clara in the twilight. "These past weeks, sometimes I forget you're not, that this isn't—" "Isn't what?" Clara asked, her heart beating faster. But Sam stood abruptly, the moment broken. "We should turn in. Long day tomorrow." The next morning brought Jake riding in hard from the range. "Boss, we got trouble. That box canyon where we moved the last of the herd, it's bone dry. Cattle are starting to drop." Sam's face went grim. "We'll have to move them to Widow's Spring. It's on Cross's land, but there's an old agreement about water rights in drought years. Cross won't honor it," Jake warned. "Not after what happened with the girl." "Then we'll remind him," Sam said, steel in his voice. Clara insisted on coming along, despite Sam's protests. "Another pair of hands to help move cattle," she argued. and he reluctantly agreed. They set out with all 4 ranch hands, driving the surviving cattle across the baked landscape. Widow's Spring sat in a natural bowl between hills, still showing green grass and flowing water. But as they approached, riders appeared on the ridgeline. Cross's men, armed and ready. "That's far enough. Sutton," Harlan Cross himself called down. "This is private property. Water rights in drought years." Sam called back. "Your predecessor signed the agreement, same as mine. It's legal and binding. Agreements can be reconsidered," Cross said, his eyes finding Clara. "Though I might be willing to negotiate. The girl works for me for a year, and your cattle can drink." "Go to hell," Sam said flatly. "Then watch them die." Cross replied. The standoff stretched taut. Clara could see the desperation in the cattle, smelling water but unable to reach it. Some were already going down, too weak to stand. She thought of Sam losing everything he'd worked for, thought of the photographs on his mantel, the ghosts he carried. "Wait," she called out before she could stop herself. "Mr. Cross, what if—" "No," Sam's voice cut like a blade. He turned to her, and she saw something fierce and protective in his eyes. Not for all the water in the territory, not for all the cattle in Texas. You don't bargain with yourself. "Clara, never again." Cross laughed. "Noble words. Sutton, let's see how noble you feel when you're bankrupt." But Clara had noticed something, a rider approaching fast from the east. As he drew closer, she recognized him as one of the federal marshals who sometimes passed through Copper Creek. "Gentlemen," the marshal called out, reining up between the 2 groups. "Got a complaint about water rights being violated. Seems there's a legal agreement about drought access to this spring." Cross's face flushed. "This is a private matter, Marshal. Water rights are federal jurisdiction in the territories," the marshal said calmly. "Now, I've seen the agreement at the land office. It's valid. You'll honor it, Mr. Cross, or I'll be back with a federal judge who'll explain it more formally." Clara later learned that Jake had ridden to Fort Union the day before, knowing this confrontation was coming. The old hand had more connections than anyone suspected. Grudgingly, Cross's men withdrew, allowing the cattle to drink. As the animals crowded around the spring, Sam moved to where Clara stood. "That was twice you tried to sacrifice yourself for this ranch," he said quietly. "Why?" Clara looked up at him, no longer hiding what she felt. "Because it's not just your ranch anymore. It's home. It's where I choose to be." She paused, then added softly, "It's where you are." Sam's breath caught, slowly, as if she might spook like a wild horse. He reached out to cup her face in his work-roughened hand. "Clara, Boss!" Jake's shout interrupted. "Looks like rain clouds building to the west." They turned to see dark clouds massing on the horizon, the first they'd seen in months. Within hours, the sky opened, sending blessed rain pouring down on the parched land. The drought wasn't over, but it was breaking. That night, they made camp near the spring, not trusting Cross enough to leave the cattle unguarded. As rain pattered on the canvas shelter, Sam and Clara sat close to the fire, shoulders touching. "My sister used to say that rain after drought was God's way of testing our faith," Sam said quietly, "making us prove we could endure before sending relief." "What do you think?" Clara asked. Sam looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I think sometimes the drought brings unexpected gifts, things we might not have found in easier times." Clara understood. Without the hardship, they might have maintained their careful distance indefinitely. The struggle had worn down walls, revealed truths. "Sam," she began, but he shook his head. "Not yet," he said gently. "When this is over, when you're truly free to choose without obligation or gratitude clouding things, then we'll speak of it." Clara wanted to protest that her feelings had nothing to do with obligation, but she saw the honor in his caution. Sam Sutton was a man who did things properly, who would court her as she deserved, not take advantage of her dependence. So she simply leaned against his shoulder as the rain fell, feeling his arm come around her, protective and warm. In the distance, thunder rolled across the mountains like a promise, and the words from her vision echoed once more. A girl sold like her mother, until the brooding rancher claimed her as his own heart. Not claimed as property. She understood now, but claimed as beloved, as chosen, as cherished. The drought had tested them, revealed them to each other. What would grow from this hard ground when the rains finally came would be strong enough to last a lifetime. The autumn morning started like any other, with Clara kneading bread dough while Sam and the hands prepared for a cattle drive to the rail depot. The drought had broken 3 weeks ago, but its effects lingered. The herd was smaller, debts had accumulated, and every sale mattered. Should be back by nightfall, Sam told her, pausing in the kitchen doorway. Since the night by Widow's Spring, something had shifted between them, a deeper awareness, touches that lingered, conversations that went beyond the practical, but true to his word. Sam maintained propriety, waiting for some sign Clara couldn't yet define. "Be careful," Clara said, dusting flour from her hands. "Pike's been too quiet lately." Sam's expression darkened. "Jake's staying behind with you. He'll be working the near pasture, but keep the rifle handy." After they left, Clara went about her chores with an unease she couldn't shake. The bread was rising when she heard horses. Too many horses. Approaching too fast. Through the window, she saw Jake spurring his mount toward the house, pursued by riders. "Inside! Miss Clara!" Jake shouted. "Bar the door!" Clara grabbed the rifle as Jake burst through, slamming the door behind him. Blood ran from a gaze on his temple. "Pike," he gasped. "Brought gunmen from Silver Ridge." They were waiting on the road. Must have taken the boss by surprise. Clara's heart clenched. "Sam, don't know. Saw them heading back this way. Rode to warn you." Jake was already loading weapons, his weathered hands steady despite the blood. "They'll be here soon." Through the window, Clara could see dust clouds approaching. Her mind raced. They couldn't hold the house against so many, and running meant abandoning everything Sam had built. "The root cellar," she said suddenly. "Help me." Together, they wrestled sacks of grain and supplies into the cellar, creating a barricade. Jake understood immediately. If they couldn't hold the house, they'd make their stand underground. They'd barely finished when horses thundered into the yard. Clara recognized Pike's voice immediately. "Come out, girl. Your protector's not here to save you this time." "What did you do to Sam?" Clara called through the shuttered window. Harsh laughter answered. "Sutton's tied up at the moment." "Literally. He'll be my guest until you come to your senses. Trade yourself for him, and he goes free." Clara's hands trembled on the rifle. Jake touched her shoulder. "Don't believe him. Miss, the boss would skin me alive if I let you trade yourself." But Clara was already thinking. Pike had made a mistake bringing Sam here instead of holding him elsewhere. That meant his men were divided. Some guarding Sam, others threatening the house. "I need time to think," Clara called out. "1 hour," Pike replied. "Then we burn you out." Clara turned to Jake. "The storm cellar connects to the old mine shaft, doesn't it? The one Sam sealed last spring?" Jake's eyes widened with understanding. "It does, but it's dangerous. Miss, could collapse. Can you make it to the barn, circle around through the mine to wherever they're holding Sam?" The old cowhand grinned fiercely. "Been crawling through tight spaces since before you were born. But what about you? I'll keep them focused here." "Go, Jake, bring him back." Jake squeezed her shoulder, then disappeared into the cellar. Clara watched through the window, counting Pike's men. 8 visible, probably more. She had to buy time, had to make them believe she was still inside, considering surrender. 30 minutes passed. Clara fired occasional shots to keep Pike's men at bay, moved between windows to create the illusion of multiple defenders. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick, but she kept shooting. "Time's running short, girl," Pike called. "I'm losing patience." Clara saw smoke rising from the barn. They were starting fires, trying to flush her out. "Think," she commanded herself. What would Sam do? What would her mother do? Her mother? The thought struck like lightning. Margaret Bennett had survived by being clever, by using men's assumptions against them. Clara began to cough loudly, dramatically. "The smoke!" she called out, her voice calculated to sound weak. "Please, I can't breathe." "I'll come out. Just don't shoot." She opened the door slowly, rifle held high, emerging with soot she'd rubbed on her face for effect. Pike's men relaxed, grinning at their victory. "Smart choice," Pike said, dismounting, "though you've cost me considerable trouble." Clara let the rifle fall, stumbling forward as if overcome by smoke. Pike moved closer, reaching for her arm, and Clara struck. Her mother had taught her a few things about survival, including where to hit a man to drop him fast. Pike doubled over, gasping, and Clara dove for his gun. The yard erupted in chaos. Pike's men, caught off guard, scrambled for positions. Clara rolled behind the water trough, Pike's pistol in her hand, firing carefully. She couldn't match their firepower, but she could make them cautious. Then, like an answered prayer, she heard Sam's voice roaring from behind the barn. "Drop your weapons!" Sam emerged with Jake and two of their ranch hands who'd escaped the initial ambush. The surprise shifted the odds. Pike's hired guns, faced with determined men who knew the terrain, began looking for escape routes. The gunfight was brief but vicious. When the smoke cleared, 2 of Pike's men were down, the rest fleeing or surrendering. Pike himself lay groaning in the dust, clutching his stomach where Clara had struck him. Sam crossed the yard in long strides, his shirt torn, a bruise darkening his jaw. He pulled Clara to her feet, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm fine," Clara assured him, though her hands shook with delayed reaction. "Jake got you out? Came through that damn mine like a ghost," Sam confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. "Clara, when I heard the shooting, thought I'd lost you." "You didn't," she interrupted. "You won't." The sheriff arrived an hour later, summoned by one of the ranch hands. This time, faced with federal attention and clear evidence of attempted kidnapping, he had no choice but to arrest Pike and his surviving men. Attempted murder, kidnapping, assault. The sheriff listed wearily. "Pike, you've overplayed your hand. No judge in the territory will side with you now." As they watched Pike being loaded into the prison wagon, Sam turned to Clara. "He won't stop, even from jail. He'll find ways to make trouble. Then we'll face it together," Clara said firmly. She looked up at him, this man who'd been taken and beaten for protecting her, who'd fought his way back to defend what they'd built. "Sam, I need to tell you. The barn's on fire," Jake's shout interrupted. They turned to see flames consuming the structure, probably set before Pike's defeat. Without hesitation, everyone, ranch hands, even the sheriff's deputies, joined the bucket brigade. They fought the fire as they'd fought everything else, together, stubborn, refusing to yield. When the last flames were doused, the barn was half gone but salvageable. Sam stood surveying the damage, soot-streaked and exhausted. "We'll rebuild," Clara said, moving to stand beside him. "We?" Sam asked, looking down at her. Clara's heart pounded, but she met his gaze steadily. "Unless you're planning to fire me, though I should warn you, I'm not leaving regardless." Sam's laugh was rough. "Surprised? Fire the woman who just outfoxed Pike and saved my ranch? Not likely." His expression grew serious. "Clara, I've been waiting, trying to court you proper, but—" "Sam Sutton," Clara interrupted. "We've been shot at, burned out, and nearly killed. I think we're past propriety." She reached up to touch his bruised jaw gently. "I love you, not from gratitude, not from obligation. I love your stubbornness, your honor, the way you see me as myself and not what others tried to make me. I choose you. Choose this life. Choose." Sam kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It carried all the fear and relief and longing of the day, of the weeks they'd danced around their feelings. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Clara saw her future in his eyes. "Marry me," Sam said roughly. "Not to protect you, not to claim you, but because I can't imagine this ranch, this life, without you in it. Because somewhere between rescuing you and being rescued by you, you became my heart." "Yes," Clara whispered, then louder. "Yes." Around them, the ranch hands cheered, Jake's whistle piercing the air. The sheriff shook his head, muttering about paperwork, but he was smiling. Even the deputies looked pleased. The story of the woman who'd fought off Pike's gang would spread through the territory like wildfire. That evening, as Clara helped serve supper to the exhausted firefighters, she felt the truth of her vision settling into place. She had been sold like her mother, but she'd found something her mother never had. A man who saw her strength, who loved her not as property, but as a partner. Sam caught her hand as she passed, pulling her down to sit beside him despite the presence of others. "No more proprieties?" he asked with a slight smile. "None," Clara agreed, leaning into his shoulder. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle this time, washing away the ash and blood of the day. The ranch would rebuild, stronger than before, and Clara Bennett, who had fled across the desert with nothing but fear and determination, had found everything home, purpose and a love worth fighting for. The news of Pike's arrest spread through the territory like wildfire, carried by cowboys and traders who embellished the tale with each telling. Within a week, Clara had become something of a legend, the woman who'd outshot hired guns and brought down the territory's most notorious creditor. She found the attention uncomfortable, but Sam pointed out its practical value. "Let them talk," he said one morning as they worked side by side repairing the barn. "The more people know you're under my protection and can protect yourself, the less likely anyone else will try Pike's games." They were to be married in 2 weeks. Once the circuit preacher made his rounds, Clara had written to her mother, sending money for medicine and care, promising to bring her to the ranch once she was well enough to travel. The letter that came back, in a neighbor's shaky hand, made her cry with relief. Margaret was recovering, blessing her daughter's choices, but peace in the territory was always fragile. 3 days after Pike's arrest, Jake rode in from town with troubling news. "Pike's got himself a fancy lawyer from Denver," he reported. "Word is he's claiming the shooting was unprovoked, that he was merely trying to collect a legal debt." Sam's jaw tightened. Let him try. Half the territory saw what happened. "That's just it," Jake continued. "His lawyer's been spreading money around, buying witnesses, and Judge Morrison's back on the bench." Clara felt a chill. Judge Morrison, the same corrupt official who'd signed the papers declaring her bound to cross. "What can we do?" "We tell the truth," Sam said firmly, "and we make sure the federal marshal knows what's happening." Over the following days, the ranch became a fortress of sorts. Sam's men took turns standing watch, and Clara never went anywhere alone. The tension was wearing, but they refused to let fear dominate their lives. The barn reconstruction continued. The cattle needed tending, and life had to go on. It was during one of these watchful afternoons that an unexpected visitor arrived. Mrs. Catherine DeWitt, Harlan Cross's sister. Clara tensed as the woman's buggy approached, but Mrs. DeWitt was alone, looking older and more tired than before. "I come in peace," she called out, hands visible and empty. "May I speak with you, Miss Bennett?" Sam stood protectively beside Clara, but she touched his arm. "Let's hear what she has to say." Mrs. DeWitt descended from her buggy with difficulty, her severe face showing new lines. "I owe you an apology," she began without preamble. "I've learned things about my brother that changed my perspective considerably." She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather folder. "These are letters between Harlan and Pike, planning your abduction. They go back months, long before any debt was incurred. They targeted your mother specifically because she was vulnerable, intending all along to take you." Clara's hands shook as she read the damning correspondence. Sam's face darkened with each page. "Why show us this?" he asked Mrs. DeWitt. The older woman's composure cracked slightly. "Because I have a daughter of my own, back east. when I realized what my brother truly intended. She shuddered. No woman deserves that fate. I've already given copies to the federal marshal. Harlan is fleeing to Mexico as we speak, and I hope never to see him again. And Pike? Clara asked. Will hang, most likely, once these letters are presented. Mrs. DeWitt straightened her shoulders. I wanted you to have these personally, to know that not everyone in Silver Ridge condoned this evil, and to wish you happiness in your marriage. You've earned it. After she left, Clara stood in the yard, holding the letters that proved her freedom beyond any doubt. Sam wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her head. It's over, he said quietly. Truly over. No, Clara corrected, turning in his arms. It's just beginning. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the autumn air crisp with promise. The small church in Copper Creek overflowed with well-wishers' ranch hands, townspeople who'd come to respect Clara's courage, even some of Cross's former employees who'd found the courage to leave his service. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved and altered by the town seamstress. Margaret, still weak but determined, had made the journey with the help of neighbors. As Clara stood before the mirror, her mother's hands adjusting the simple veil, their eyes met in understanding. You found your freedom, Margaret whispered. And love besides. I'm so proud of you, my daughter. I learned strength from you, Mama, Clara replied, embracing her carefully. You survived so I could thrive. Sam waited at the altar in his best suit, Jake standing as his best man, when Clara appeared at the church door. Sam's composed expression cracked, revealing wonder and love so profound it took her breath away. She walked down the aisle on steady feet, no longer the frightened girl who'd fled into a sandstorm, but a woman choosing her future with clear eyes and a full heart. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional, but when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could be heard clear to the saloon. Sam kissed his bride with tender reverence, then whispered in her ear, My heart, my wife, my Clara. The celebration that followed was a territorial affair. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by neighbors. Fiddle music filled the air, and even the marshal joined in the dancing. Clara found herself passed from partner to partner, everyone wanting to dance with the bride who'd tamed Sam Sutton and brought down Josiah Pike. But it was the quiet moments she treasured. Sam's hand finding hers between dances, the pride in his eyes when he looked at her, the way he held her during their first dance as husband and wife, as if she were precious beyond measure. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, the newlyweds prepared to leave for the ranch. The hands had decorated the wagon with ribbons and wildflowers, and Jake had tears in his eyes as he helped Clara up to the seat. You take care of him, Miss Clara, Mrs. Sutton. He corrected himself with a grin. He's been waiting for you longer than he knew. The ride home was peaceful, the stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. Clara leaned against her husband's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. They didn't need words. Everything important had already been said. When they reached the ranch, Sam lifted her down from the wagon, but instead of setting her on her feet, he carried her across the threshold of the house that was now truly her home. Inside, candles flickered in every window, the hand's wedding gift, turning the simple dwelling into something magical. Welcome home, Mrs. Sutton, Sam said softly, finally setting her down but keeping her close. Clara looked around the familiar room, seeing it anew. This was where she'd found sanctuary, where she'd discovered her own strength, where she'd fallen in love with a man who saw her truly. The journey from that terrified girl in the desert to this moment seemed impossible. Yet here she stood. Do you remember, she asked, that first night when you told me I was free to leave whenever I chose? I remember, Sam replied, his hands framing her face gently. I was terrified you would. And now? Clara asked, though she knew the answer in the way he looked at her. Now I know you choose to stay. Choose us, every day, and I'll spend my life making sure you never regret that choice. Outside, a wolf howled in the distance, the same sound that had terrified her that night in the desert. Now it seemed like a benediction, a wild blessing on their union. The land that had tried to break her had instead forged her into someone stronger, someone capable of meeting Sam Sutton as an equal, of building a life in this challenging, beautiful place. As Sam led her deeper into their home, Clara thought one last time of the vision that had haunted her journey, a girl sold like her mother, until the brooding rancher claimed her as his own heart. The prophecy had come true, but not as she'd feared. She hadn't been claimed as property, but as beloved. Not taken, but chosen. Not ending her story, but beginning a new chapter. The candles burned low as the night deepened, and in the house built of logs and stone and dreams, two hearts that had found each other across desert and hardship settled into the rhythm of a shared life, a earned peace, and a love that would endure like the mountains standing sentinel around their valley home. Winter settled over the valley like a blessing, bringing snow that promised good water come spring. The ranch had found its rhythm again, with Clara now fully mistress of the house and Sam's true partner in all decisions. News had come from Denver that Pike had been found guilty on all charges: kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. His sentence of 20 years hard labor meant he would never trouble them again. On a crisp December morning, Clara stood at her mother's graveside, Sam's steady presence beside her. Margaret had passed peacefully just 2 weeks after the wedding, her body finally giving in to the illness she'd fought so long. But she'd died free, in a warm bed, knowing her daughter was safe and loved. She was so happy those last days, Clara said softly, placing wildflowers on the simple headstone. She said seeing me married to a good man was worth all the hardship. Sam wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She raised a remarkable daughter. Her legacy lives on in you. As they walked back through Copper Creek's small cemetery, Clara noticed changes in the town. New businesses were opening, families moving in. The lawlessness that had allowed men like Pike to flourish was giving way to order and community. The sheriff, chastened by federal oversight, now enforced laws fairly. Even the saloon seemed less rough, with a new ordinance against carrying guns inside town limits. Progress, Sam observed, helping Clara into the wagon. Though I wonder sometimes if we'll miss the old wildness. Not I, Clara said firmly. I've had enough wildness to last a lifetime. Back at the ranch, they found Jake training a new hand, a young man named Thomas who'd fled trouble in Texas. Sam had a way of gathering strays, men who needed second chances, and Clara supported it. She knew the value of being given opportunity when the world seemed against you. That evening, as Clara prepared supper, she felt a wave of dizziness. She gripped the table, waiting for it to pass, but Sam noticed immediately. "Are you well?" he asked, concern sharp in his voice. "Just tired," Clara assured him, though she'd been feeling off for several days. "The trip to town, the emotions." Sam wasn't convinced, but he let it go. It wasn't until a week later, when Clara fainted while feeding the chickens, that he insisted on calling the doctor from Silver Ridge. Doctor. Marcus Wells was a competent man who'd arrived after Cross fled, bringing medical knowledge and a refreshing lack of prejudice. After examining Clara, he smiled broadly. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Sutton. You're expecting a child, I'd say about 3 months along." The news hit them both like a thunderbolt. Sam went pale, then flushed, then grabbed Clara in an embrace so fierce she squeaked. "A baby," he kept repeating. "Our baby." Clara found herself laughing and crying simultaneously. A child, proof of their love, hope for the future, but also terrifying in its responsibility. "I don't know anything about babies," she confessed. "We'll learn together," Sam promised, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Just like we've learned everything else." The ranch hands reacted to the news with touching enthusiasm. Jake immediately began carving a cradle, muttering about doing it proper for the little one. Thomas offered to take on Clara's heavier chores, and even the taciturn Ben smiled more often. As winter deepened toward spring, the ranch prepared for its newest arrival. Sam became almost comically protective, trying to prevent Clara from lifting anything heavier than a coffee pot. She tolerated it with amused patience, understanding the fear behind his care. He'd lost so much family already. One evening in late February, as they sat by the fire planning the spring planting, a knock came at the door. Sam tensed, hand moving to his rifle, but Clara recognized the voice calling out, "It's Mrs. DeWitt," she said, surprised. The older woman entered, looking travel-worn but determined. "Forgive the intrusion," she began, "but I have news you need to hear. My brother Harlan was captured trying to cross into Mexico. He's being brought back for trial." Clara's hand moved protectively to her rounded belly. "Will he cause trouble?" "Not anymore. Mrs." DeWitt said firmly. "He's confessed to everything in exchange for avoiding the rope. But that's not why I'm here." She pulled out a document. Harlan owned considerable land around Silver Ridge. As his only living relative, it falls to me. I want to make things right. She spread the paper on the table. It was a deed. The section bordering your ranch, nearly 1,000 acres, including Widow's Spring, I'm signing it over to you both. Consider it reparation for what my family tried to do. Sam studied the document carefully. This is generous. Mrs. DeWitt. Too generous. "No," the woman said firmly. "It's justice. My brother tried to steal Mrs. Sutton's freedom. The least I can do is ensure your children have security." She smiled at Clara's obvious pregnancy. "Besides, I'm moving back east to be with my daughter. I want no reminders of Harlan's evil." After she left, Sam and Clara stood on the porch, looking out over their land, now doubled in size, with assured water rights and room to grow. "Our children will never know want," Sam said quietly. "Never face what you faced. They'll know work." Clara corrected. "They'll know the value of freedom earned and defended. But yes, they'll be safe." As if in response, the baby moved for the first time, a flutter like butterfly wings. Clara gasped, grabbing Sam's hand and placing it on her belly. They stood frozen, waiting. And then it came again, life asserting itself. Hope made physical. "I felt it," Sam whispered, wonder in his voice. "Our child." Spring arrived with a vengeance, melting snow swelling the streams, grass exploding green across the range. The expanded ranch meant more work, but also more hands to do it. Sam hired carefully, often choosing men like Thomas who needed fresh starts. Clara insisted on vetting them too. She had an instinct for character that Sam had learned to trust. The barn was fully rebuilt, better than before. The house gained an addition, a room for the baby, with windows facing the sunrise. Jake's cradle sat waiting, polished with care, while Clara sewed tiny garments from fabric the ranch women brought as gifts. One April morning, Clara stood where she'd first seen the ranch, that desperate day when Sam had saved her from the desert. So much had changed. The frightened girl was gone, replaced by a woman of strength and purpose. The isolated bachelor's holding had become a thriving operation, a place of second chances and new beginnings. "No regrets?" Sam asked, joining her. Clara leaned back against him, feeling their child move within her. "How could I regret the path that brought me to you, that brought us to this?" He kissed the top of her head. "When I saw you in the desert that day, I thought I was saving you, but you saved me just as much. From loneliness, from living in the past, from becoming the kind of bitter man who could have turned away. We saved each other," Clara said simply. "And now we build the future." A dust cloud on the horizon announced riders approaching. Clara no longer tensed at such sights. Pike was imprisoned. Cross fled, and the ranch's reputation meant few would dare cause trouble. These turned out to be neighbors, coming to discuss the spring roundup. As Clara served coffee to the gathered ranchers, she caught their respectful glances. She'd earned her place here through courage and determination. The story of the woman who'd fought off outlaws was becoming territorial legend, growing with each telling. But Clara knew the real victory wasn't in the dramatic moments. It was in this quiet life built day by day, in the love that filled this house, in the child growing beneath her heart. in the land that had tested her and found her worthy. That night, as she and Sam prepared for bed, he told her Jake had seen riders near the southern boundary. "Probably just passing through," he said. "But I'll check tomorrow." "We'll check tomorrow," Clara corrected. "I'm pregnant, not helpless." Sam smiled, knowing better than to argue. His wife was a force of nature, and he wouldn't have her any other way. As they settled into bed, Clara felt again the movement of their child, stronger now, full of life and promise. Outside, the wind sang through the cottonwoods, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Not a threat now, but a reminder of the wild freedom that blessed their chosen life. The girl souled like her mother had become a woman who chose her own fate, who'd found love not as a cage, but as wings, and in the shelter of Sam's arms, with their child stirring between them and their land stretching safe and prosperous under the stars. Clara Sutton knew that every hardship had been worth this happiness, this home, this hope for all the tomorrows yet to come. Spring transformed into summer, bringing with it the final month of Clara's pregnancy and a season of abundance to the Triple S ranch. The cattle grew fat on sweet grass. The vegetable garden overflowed with produce, and the fruit trees Sam had planted as a wedding gift began bearing their first small harvest. Life flourished everywhere Clara looked. On a particularly warm June morning, Clara stood in the garden, one hand supporting her heavy belly, the other picking beans for dinner. The baby was active today, rolling and kicking as if eager to join the world. She hummed softly, the same lullaby her mother had sung, now passed to a new generation. "Mrs. Sutton, you should be resting." Thomas called from the barn, concern evident in his young voice. Clara smiled. The entire ranch had become protective of her as her time drew near. "The day I can't pick beans is the day they can put me in the ground," she called back, though she did move to sit on the bench Sam had placed in the garden shade. From her seat, she could see the whole of their domain, the expanded pastures dotted with cattle, the rebuilt barn now larger than before, the bunkhouse where good men found honest work and second chances. Jake emerged from the workshop, carrying something carefully wrapped in cloth. "Finished it, ma'am," he said proudly, unveiling a child-sized rocking horse, carved with patient skill and love. Every young Sutton needs a good horse, even if it's made of wood. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "It's beautiful." "Jake, thank you." The old cowhand flushed with pleasure. "Been thinking," he said, settling on the bench beside her, "about how different this place is now. When the boss first came here, he was like a ghost. Went through the motions of living but wasn't really alive. Then you came along." "He saved me first," Clara pointed out. "Maybe so," Jake agreed. "But you gave him reason to build something worth saving." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching wagons, several of them, raising dust on the road from town. Clara stood carefully, shading her eyes. As the lead wagon came into view, she gasped with delight. "It's the church ladies," she exclaimed. Indeed, a delegation of women from Copper Creek and even Silver Ridge had come calling, their wagons loaded with mysterious bundles. Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife who'd become a dear friend, climbed down first. "Surprise," she called. "Every mother needs a proper welcome for her baby." What followed was Clara's first experience with a frontier baby shower. The women had brought quilts, hand-stitched with love, tiny garments knitted during long evenings, preserves and pickles to stock the pantry, and wisdom passed down through generations. They transformed the main room into a circle of feminine energy, sharing stories of their own births, offering advice, and celebrating Clara's journey from desperate runaway to respected rancher's wife. Even Mrs. DeWitt had sent a gift from Boston, a beautiful christening gown of Irish lace. "You've changed this territory." Old Mrs. Murphy told Clara, patting her hand. "Showed our daughters that a woman can stand up for herself, can choose her own path. That's worth more than all the cattle in Texas." As the afternoon wore on, Sam and the hands made themselves scarce. Understanding this was women's territory. but Clara caught glimpses of her husband hovering near the barn, close enough to hear if she needed him. The party was winding down when Clara felt the first pain-sharp, unexpected, taking her breath away. She gripped the arm of her chair, trying not to alarm anyone, but Mrs. Patterson's experienced eye caught the tension immediately. "How long have you been having pains, dear?" she asked quietly. "Just started." Clara managed, then gasped as another wave hit. Oh, that's different." The atmosphere changed instantly. Women who'd been chatting happily became focused and efficient. Someone sent Thomas racing for Dr. Wells. Others began heating water and gathering supplies. Mrs. Patterson took charge with the authority of a woman who'd delivered 7 children of her own. "First babies take their time," she assured Clara. "We'll get you comfortable." But this baby seemed unaware of the usual rules. The pains came faster, stronger. By the time Sam burst through the door, Clara was already deep in labor's grip. "Clara!" He was at her side instantly, face white with worry. "I'm all right," she panted, gripping his hand. "The baby's just eager." Dr. Wells arrived as the sun began setting, turning the sky brilliant orange and pink. He examined Clara with professional calm. "Everything's progressing normally, just quickly. This little one has inherited their mother's determination." The hours that followed blurred together, pain and purpose. Sam's steady presence, the doctor's calm instructions, the women's encouraging voices. Clara found strength she didn't know she possessed, driven by the ancient imperative to bring forth life. As full dark fell and stars filled the sky, a new voice joined the night, the strong, healthy cry of a baby greeting the world. "A son, Doctor," Wells announced, placing the squalling infant on Clara's chest. "A fine, healthy son." Clara looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect, and felt her heart expand beyond anything she'd imagined possible. Sam's hand shook as he touched his son's head, tears streaming unashamed down his weathered face. "He's beautiful," he whispered. "Clara, he's perfect. What will you name him?" Mrs. Patterson asked, beaming. Clara and Sam exchanged glances. They'd discussed this through the long winter evenings. "Samuel James Sutton," Clara said, "after his father and his grandfather, but we'll call him Jamie." The baby quieted at his mother's voice, dark eyes trying to focus on her face. In that moment, Clara understood completely why her mother had endured so much for this love that overwhelmed and humbled, that made every sacrifice worthwhile. As the women cleaned and fussed, making mother and baby comfortable, Sam never moved from Clara's side. When they were finally alone with their son, he gathered them both in his arms, creating a circle of protection and love. "A year ago, you were running through the desert alone," he murmured. "Now look at us. A family," Clara said softly, watching Jamie's tiny fingers wrap around one of hers. "A real family." Through the window, she could see the ranch hands gathered outside, passing a bottle in celebration. Jake's gap-toothed grin visible in the lamplight. This too was family, the chosen bonds of loyalty and shared purpose. Over the following days, the ranch adjusted to its newest resident. Jamie proved to have healthy lungs and a hearty appetite, thriving under his parents' devoted care. Visitors came from miles around to see the baby and pay respects to the family that had become a symbol of triumph over adversity. One afternoon, as Clara sat on the porch nursing Jamie, Sam beside her going over the ranch accounts, she noticed riders approaching. Her body tensed automatically, but Sam's hand on her shoulder was reassuring. "Federal Marshal," he identified. "With news, I'd guess." The marshal tipped his hat respectfully. "Mrs. Sutton. Mr. Sutton. Thought you'd want to know. Josiah Pike died in prison last week. Heart gave out. The doctor said." Clara felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sorrow. Pike was simply part of a past that no longer had power over her. "Thank you for telling us," she said quietly. After the marshal left, Sam studied her face. "You all right?" "Yes," Clara said, and meant it. He can't hurt anyone anymore. That's all that matters. As summer reached its peak, the ranch prospered beyond their dreams. The additional land from Mrs. DeWitt meant they could expand the herd significantly. Sam hired more hands, all carefully chosen, many with stories of their own about second chances. The Triple S had become known as a place where hard work was rewarded and the past could be left behind. Clara resumed her duties gradually. Jamie carried in a sling as she worked. He was a happy baby, content to observe the world from the safety of his mother's arms. The ranch hands doted on him. Jake, especially, who could often be found telling the infant long stories about horses and cattle drives. One evening, as purple twilight settled over the valley, Clara and Sam sat on their porch, Jamie sleeping peacefully in his father's arms. The ranch spread before them, the fruit of their labor, their love, their refusal to let hardship defeat them. "Do you remember," Clara said softly, "the words that haunted me during those terrible days? A girl sold like her mother, until the brooding rancher claimed her as his own heart." Sam shifted Jamie gently, reaching for Clara's hand. "I remember. I understand now." Clara continued, "It wasn't a curse or a condemnation. It was a promise that the cycle could be broken, that love could transform claim into choice, ownership into partnership." She looked up at him, this man who'd given her freedom by respecting it. "You did claim my heart, Sam Sutton, as I claimed yours, as equals." Sam brought her hand to his lips. "And our son will grow up knowing that strength comes not from dominion over others, but from lifting them up. That's your gift to the future, Clara." A coyote called in the distance, answered by another, their wild song echoing across the land. But here, in the circle of lamplight, with her son in her husband's arms and their home solid around them, Clara felt only peace. The scared girl who'd fled into a sandstorm was gone, transformed into a woman of substance and joy. The Triple S Ranch stood as testament to the power of choice, of love, of refusing to repeat the patterns of the past. And as the stars emerged one by one in the vast western sky, Clara Sutton knew that every painful step of her journey had led to this moment, this life, this love that would echo through generations. The story that began with a girl sold had become a legacy of freedom, written not in chains, but in choices, not in fear, but in courage, not in claiming, but in choosing each other, every day, forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the Old West. If you're listening to this story, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more tales of love, courage, and redemption from America's frontier days. Your thoughts and feelings about Clara and Sam's story mean the world to me, so please share them in the comments. Until next time, partners.